Thank you.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. If there is a need for translation, I will try to speak as slowly as possible. My topic of today is the incarnation of Ahriman and Rudolf Steiner and modern technology. And it is really about Steiner's interpretation of larger technological changes in the modern world, and how he, as an esotericist and philosophical thinker, responded to those changes. The theme of technology and modern esotericism is a very welcome theme that hasn't been studied that much yet. So it really opens up for our understanding of how esotericists interpreted important and central aspects of modernity in their thought. In this lecture, I will explore two main points. The first point is to explore Steiner's views on technology, and the second one is to try to contextualize these views historically and by comparison with other major intellectual thinkers from the German context during his time and a little bit further up closer to our own present time, especially Max Weber and Martin Heidegger, and I will also mention Marcuse. First, a little bit about the historical context in which Steiner wrote and in which he reacted to. We tend to forget that with the Industrial Revolution from the end of the 18th century, major changes happened in terms of social changes, economic changes, the ways in which people worked, the relation with nature. Historians agree that actually the changes that took place during the 19th century can be equaled to the Neolithic revolution some 12,000 years ago, where we turned from hunting to food production, or maybe a little bit later, about 5,000 years ago, when major cities began the writing of history. In a very short period, about 100 years, the entire landscape in the Western Hemisphere changed. At the end of the 18th century, about 90% or more of all people lived in rural settings outside cities and worked as farmers in relation to nature. And a few people lived in cities together. And of course, they didn't work in factories, or they were still connected through art, different artisans, different forms of work with natural aspects. Through the industrialization in the 19th century, people began to move to cities, as we know, and a new global economy, a new kind of market system was established, and people began to work in factories, quite a lot of people, away from the natural rhythms of everyday life. As you can see in the picture, man, technology, man and the machine came much closer, and in certain aspects became a part of each other. And this is really at the core of modernity. We created machines and technology to fulfill our needs, to meet an end, but a lot of concern has been around the fact that machines have also changed people, and so we might have produced machines in our image, but the machines also, in the other way around, form us in its image. We also become a kind of machine, which is Steiner's concern, Weber's concern, and other thinkers, as I will discuss. So with these extensive changes through the 19th century, it is no wonder that esotericists and philosophers, social thinkers reacted to these major changes, trying to pose new directions for the development of modernity. Rudolf Steiner is one of the most well-known modern esotericists. He was trained as a philosopher, and he is the founder of the Anthroposophical Society. He was also a leading member of the Theosophical Society from 1902 in Germany, the leader of the German section. And even though the term technology wasn't used that much still in the early 20th century, Steiner was in fact one of the early thinkers and esotericists who employed the term and discussed how technology has changed our relation to nature, our relation to the world. He especially talked about that in his lectures on technology and art from 1914, and also in his lecture on the Ahrimanic deception from 1919. In a moment I will discuss what Ahriman really is and what he means by that term. In the center of the Anthroposophical Society in Dornach, the Goethe Annum, there's a statue which Steiner created, which you can see here on the slide. It represents some of the core thoughts of Steiner's esotericism. Basically, humanity is exposed through history to three major occult forces, which at the same time are cosmic beings. And you can see these three beings in this statue. On the left, at the top, it's a little bit difficult to see here, but that's Lucifer. And then beneath that you have Ahriman, and then you have Christ. Steiner called this statue the representation of humanity. So in relation to German Romanticism, the task of humanity is to maintain our freedom and to develop through history to reach the true spiritual, which is represented by Christ. So, but on the right hand, you have an influence from a being called Lucifer, and Lucifer is not negative in the sense that it's the devil. Steiner borrowed this term in many ways from German Romanticism, where Lucifer was regarded as a rebel, a hero that gave man the nature, the light of nature. And in theosophy, Blavatsky also equaled Lucifer with the higher intellect, which was given to man, which really produced man. Because man was, at the beginning of time, a kind of a robot, an automata, which had no intellect, no higher spiritual faculty. And Lucifer gave man that ability, which is also a kind of Gnostic reinterpretation of the story of the Garden of Eden, where Lucifer comes and awakens man to his blindness, from his blindness. So Lucifer is a kind of force that tempts man to become more and more abstract and spiritual. On the other hand, we have Ahriman, which is an old Persian Zoroastrian term. He was the evil brother of Ormuz. And Steiner, we don't know the exact sources why Steiner used Ahriman, or where from he got the term. It was not that prevalent in philosophical discourse. But Ahriman is kind of material tendency that brings man downwards. He's also a kind of cosmic being that tempts man, and which has a special influence during a specific time. Steiner talked about the fifth post-Atlantic period, which began about the time of the end of the 15th century with Copernicus, which really is the time of the modern period, where this Ahrimanic influence begins to emerge, which is related to materialism, natural sciences, and technology, and so forth, as I will discuss in a moment. Christ in the middle represents man's potential to balance the forces on left and right, and thus maintain humanity's freedom. Some of the general characteristics of Lucifer are very much related to the flight of Icarus. It's about immateriality, spirituality, gnosis, unification, generalization, fantasy, airy or airiness, and frenzy, all of which lift man out of matter into the spiritual realm. But if this force gets too much weight, man will completely lose his grip and become completely airy or ethereal, and have no touch with reality, and will not be able to balance his being and his freedom. On the other hand, we have Ahriman, which according to Steiner is a force that brings man down into matter, with some of these characteristics such as technology, for example, matter, solidification, particularization, sensory perception, proof, tedium, or everything that pulls man down and binds man in isolated units. So there are kind of two forces working in Steiner's esotericism, one that solidifies and one that spiritualizes. But both are needed for the educational development of man through history, but they have to be balanced, which is represented by Christ, the Christ principle. And this is the Christ principle from the statue, where you can see the face here. So the Ahrimanic principle is really the principle that is related to technology and modernity in Steiner. So Ahriman is used as a kind of interpretive notion for what is happening from an occult perspective during modern times, in terms of what is technology, what is the essence of technology. Technology is a force that influences the earth and mankind. And Steiner speaks about the influence of Ahriman as a kind of technologicization of the world, and a complete change of human environment. He has this kind of meta-interpretive structure related to how he understands modernity and technology. So in terms of changing the environment through technology, Steiner says that, of course, we all know that there was a scientific revolution, empiricism, the experimental method were employed, and we learned to control the forces of nature, and that is what enabled us to produce technology. But Steiner also says that is the exoteric or external viewpoint. That is really Ahrimanic language. It's kind of an illusion. Ahriman poses an illusion that wants us to believe that there is nothing except the physical to hide his own influence and being. What is really going on, Steiner explains in these two quotes, for example, the process of technological transformation of the world. I'll just read here from Steiner. What is important here is that we cast out of nature the elemental spirits belonging to the sphere of the regular progressive hierarchies, who in fact are the very spirits who maintain nature. In all natural existence there are elemental spiritual beings. When we plunder nature, we squeeze out the nature spirits in the sphere of the spirit. That is in fact what is constantly happening during the first stage. We smash and plunder material nature and thus release the nature spirits, driving them forth from the sphere allotted them by the Jehovah gods into a realm where they can fly about freely and are no longer bound to their allotted dwelling places. Thus we call the first stage the casting out of the nature spirits. The second stage is the one where we put together what we have plundered from nature, according to our knowledge of natural laws. Now, when we construct a machine or a complex of machines out of raw material according to our knowledge of natural laws, we put certain spiritual beings into the things we constructed. So nature has a natural structure, and when we reduce nature to a resource and try to drive the energy from nature, we destroy those structures, and all the spiritual nature beings who inhabit nature are thrown out. And then when we reconstruct nature through technology, then it's not lifeless structures, but it's Ahrimanic spirits who are imposed into those structures. So we create a different world around us, filled with another type of spiritual beings than the natural ones. And these Ahrimanic beings that we put into machines, which we surround us with, they of course have all the Ahrimanic qualities binding us to the material world. The second quote here, thus we could say that at the first stage, at the cultural level, we have technology around us stuffed full of Ahrimanic spirits which we have put there. This is what things look like from inside, the esoteric perspective. So in fact, modernity is about completely changing and rearranging the world of nature into a human constructed world functioning on the basis of Ahrimanic spirits. Steiner did not believe that we had to isolate ourselves from the modern world or from technology. He had a lot of concerns about technology and the modern world. And he saw that some of his esoteric colleagues, they wanted to isolate themselves from the modern world, live in the forests or outside cities, or try to reduce the use of technology and so forth, which they also do, of course, in some degree in Steiner schools. But Steiner said that we just have to build up the right resistance to modernity and technology. And that is how he, in a way, legitimizes anthroposophy, or his esoteric teachings. His esoteric teachings would give man the necessary resistance to modernity and give man the spiritual aspect that can be robbed from man during the modern period when we are surrounded by technology. Steiner, for example, writes here, we need spiritual science as a kind of compensation for those things in modern life that weaken what we might actually say destroy something of the general divine spiritual life forces of man. So that was in a way how, very briefly, Steiner, he interpreted modern technology and modernity. It is a rearrangement of modern society, of the individual, and if we are not careful, we could be enslaved by those forces if we are not able to balance them through the teachings of anthroposophy, for example. During Steiner's time, a lot of other intellectual thinkers, such as the great sociologist Max Weber, for example, posed or showed similar concerns about technology. Of course, he wrote as a sociologist and not as an esotericist. But if we look at some of his analyses of technology and modernity, there are many similarities. Max Weber thought about technology not just as machines, instruments, and gadgets, so to speak. He wanted to analyze technology as a sociological process as well. For Max Weber, technology is also a kind of modern mindset, very much related to what he called rationalization or instrumental rationality. Weber, he thought about modernity as the introduction of a mindset that is built on the idea of a means to an end, efficiency to the modern subject. Everything is transformed to calculation. Rationalization is really about efficiency and calculation. The modern subject always considers every aspect of his being, whether it's in interrelationship with other human beings or it's about work, is always about calculation. What is the most efficient path? What is the purpose of this? And how can I become more efficient and faster in this aspect? Of course, this kind of modern mindset based on rationalization has become the dominant one in structuring our social spheres, our economy, and the technological production machine, so to speak. Weber couples the bureaucracy or bureaucratization of society with rationalization as the basic structure of modernity. And it is also kind of technological implementation of this mindset in modernity. That basically means that individuals tend to lose their freedom, which also was Steiner's concern, because we become a small piece in a great machine, the machine of society. And that is also what he termed the iron cage. Once we have been programmed with a subjectivity based on rationalization, and society around us is structured in that way, and work is not anymore related to nature but in factories and so forth, then we become a part of a machine that has one basic structure, a means to an end, efficiency, calculation, and so forth. So in that machine, which modern citizens are deemed to live in, individual freedom tends to be lost, and most of our daily operations and routines are related to this idea of compulsion, opposite to individual freedom. He also writes, as in the second piece on my slide here, in relation to what I write, technical and economic conditions of machine production today determine the lives of all individuals who are, as Weber wrote, born into this mechanism with irresistible force. Perhaps, Weber writes, it will be so until the last ton of fossil coal is burned. So he does not really see any escape from the iron cage. Once this type of mindset of rationalization dominates modern technological society, then it will not stop until there are no more resources, because the entire world is thought of as a resource bank, so to speak. The other aspect of Weber's thought is, of course...
Not more than 5 minutes, please.
Okay, yes. The other aspect of Weber's idea is the laws of meaning. Science cannot any longer give any meaning to the world. It can describe the functions of different aspects, but existential meaning is completely lost unless we move into the religious sphere or other types of spheres. So he did not believe that science would progress towards more and more human happiness, for example. In fact, we don't know about that because it's not possible to discover laws in nature and history in that sense. Another influential thinker, very much related to what Steiner has said and what Max Weber has said, is Martin Heidegger, one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century. I'll do this very briefly, even though that is of course difficult with a philosopher like Martin Heidegger. But basically Heidegger thought that our modern conception of what technology is false, and it's perverted. The idea that technology is a means to an end, that we build a bridge in order to reach the other side, that is not really what technology is truly about. Technology is just not just a means to an end. Technology is related to the old Greek idea of poetry. Technology is a kind of revealing. Through technology, the technological process, technology is, the essence of technology is not a machine. The essence of technology is a process. It is the bringing forth of something that has been hidden or has been inside the human subject. It is a bringing forth into the world. Like in poetry, it's a bringing forth, a revealing. That's according to Heidegger the original meaning. And what happens is that when we regard all of nature as a kind of energy resource, what that type of mentality, which is divided between subject and object, reveals is it reveals Earth, as Heidegger states, as a kind of coal mine or energy resource. It reveals soil as a mineral deposit. That is the basic understanding we get of nature if we view technology as a means to an end. And in that system, we don't learn any more about what humanity really contains. we just learn about man as an energy resource. Man, like Max Weber, becomes a kind of standing reserve. Man becomes a kind of battery. If man is not in the system as a working part, then he stands reserved as energy to be used in the future in the great machine of technological society. Very briefly, Herbert Marcuse also saw the loss of human freedom in modern technological society. Marcuse says that when reason, which is really our critical sense of freedom, our ability to analyze freely, when that becomes rationalized as efficiency, calculation, a means to an end, then we lose that vital humanness we have. And he also saw the processes of modern technology and the rearrangement of society on that basis as a loss of freedom. Even though technology, of course, could set man free, because technology could take over hard labor and so forth, that has not really happened. Instead, we have become a part of the machine. So, conclusion part 1. Steiner not only adopted scientific discourse, but also reacted to the significant technological changes with concern. He interpreted the changes in terms of occultism, formulating his esoteric doctrines in response to what he saw as the challenges of modernity. Steiner also legitimized the necessity of anthroposophy in relation to technology as a counterforce to the incarnation of Ahriman, or technology, being the full dominance of technology and related characteristics. Many of Steiner's concerns about technology were shared by intellectuals at the time. Loss of human freedom, loss of relation to nature, change of subjectivity, enslavement, materialism, and rationalization. Steiner's way of thinking about technological changes compares to Weber and Heidegger and Marcuse in their totalizing approaches or meta-interpretations in terms of processes. The ontological basis was, however, different. Steiner posed real occult forces to be the causes of modern technology, whereas Weber found socio-historical and Heidegger philosophical intellectual causes. Steiner could pose a religious esoteric solution, whereas Weber could not, and Heidegger hoped to. All these thinkers, I would argue, continue various strands of Romanticism, which also was a reaction to industrialization that never left us and is an integral part of the dialectics of modernity. So thank you very much.